Okay,
necesito
All
agua.
right. Looks like we're
Okay.
live.
That's great.
Good morning,
I'm going
Joe.
live too.
good morning, Scott. How are you?
Doing well. How are you?
I'm okay.
We're joined this morning by Jesus Rodriguez from Caracas. He is the former Consul General of Venezuela in Chicago, now back in Venezuela, and where he's the editor of the Orinoco Tribune. He's joining us this morning, again, from Caracas to talk about the coup attempt and the resistance to it in Venezuela. Welcome, Jesus.
How are you guys? Thank you for inviting me. It's always a pleasure to talk to you and to do things with you.
Well, thank you so much. So just a little bit of kind of background first. One of the terms that comes up a lot in discussions of Venezuela is the Bolivarian Revolution. What does that mean, and what especially does this term Bolivarian refer to?
That's a big question. But basically, Bolivar is our hero. Bolivar was a rich Venezuelan that was born in the 18th century, and his family owned most like a big chunk of Venezuela. But besides that, he decided that he didn't agree with the ruling of the Spaniards over Venezuela, and he spent the rest of his life battling against them, and finally he expelled them around 1821, if you ask me. And since then, he has been the great example for Venezuelans, and he didn't only liberate Venezuela, but also expelled the Spaniards out of Colombia, Panama, Peru, Ecuador, and we didn't annex them, and we didn't try to occupy those countries or whatever. We just want to liberate, and actually Bolivar's plan was to create a big country, and the name of that country was Colombia. So Bolivar is an inspiration. It's an anti-imperialist inspiration, because Bolivar, even at that time, was very anti-imperialistic. One of the most famous phrases of him was Estados Unidos está asignado por la providencia para propagar América Latina de miseria en nombre de la libertad. I'm going to translate it somehow. The U.S. is appointed by God to plague Latin America of poverty and misery in the name of liberty. That's one of the things he said.
Wow.
In the early 19th century. So you can imagine what we are talking about here. So that's to give you a very brief insight about what Bolivarianism is. And what happened is that Chavez bring those ideas alive, and those ideas were kind of underground for a lot of time. And Chavez bring those ideas alive, and I believe that that is one of the best things that Chavez did, among others, of course.
So the idea of national sovereignty then is central to
yes,
to the project.
Yes, absolutely, an anti-imperialist.
So what were some of the gains that the Bolivarian Revolution made in terms of the everyday life of the Venezuelan people?
That's a good question, especially because in recent years, we have been experiencing a lot of economic distress caused by U.S. sanctions mostly. And because of that, people sometimes tend to forget all the good things that happened before 2014 or 2013. When we say that the economic war started. I mean, the U.S. aggression, the U.S. sanctions. So just to summarize, I could tell you that Chavez, one of the big things that did was to bring dignity to the Venezuelans. There's an echo somewhere around there. Chavez brought dignity for Venezuelans, especially for those ones that didn't belong to the elite, that didn't belong to the wealthy class. He brought dignity to them, and they felt recognized by the government. And that scene is still alive, even though we are passing through these difficult times. That spirit is there. That's one of the best things that Chavez did.
And
He
that
initiated
dignity,
programs for the what?
that dignity, it also had a political form, right? There were the communal councils and new
Of
ways
course,
for people to
of
organize.
That's what I was about to say. Yes, we had social programs like Mission Robinson, which provide, which with the help of Cuban, help eradicate illiteracy in Venezuela. We had Mission Barrio Adentro that provided, with the help of Cubans, also provided doctors for free and medicine for free in the poorest shanty towns in the country. We had Mission Vivienda, which has been already, even in these current economic circumstances, we have reached a few weeks ago the house 2.5 million. So that's to give you an idea of the advances of the revolution, even though we are right now in the middle of this economical crisis, but also right now in the middle of this aggression from the U.S. and other countries. So that's to give
Jesus,
you
can you talk to us a little bit about the economic crisis? What is the cause of it? Is it that Venezuela is too dependent on oil revenue? Is it because of interference from the U.S. government? What's the source of it?
I believe that it's a mix of a lot of factors. I believe that the dependency on oil is still there, even though the government invested a lot in trying to diversify the economy. The oil dependency is there. And I believe that some economists and historians in Venezuela have said for decades that that's the curse of oil. And that doesn't happen only in Venezuela. Even in those Middle Eastern countries that the media show like examples of good economic success or whatever. I mean, you disregarding the publicity, you know that they are still dependent on oil. So it's a course. We have been trying to fix that, but it's not easy. But the economic crisis is also a consequence of U.S. sanctions that didn't start with President Trump. They started with President Obama. So when Obama approved a decree saying that Venezuela was unusual and extraordinary security threat to the U.S., that's when everything started. I'm talking about 2014. So there were economic, financial sanctions, and it's important to highlight that sometimes there are not sanctions. I mean, there's no necessity of sanctions. When you talk about economy, the economic actors, when they feel that they might be prosecuted, that they might be sanctioned, fined, or whatever by the U.S. government, they act differently with you. I'm talking in this case with Venezuela. So since then, since 2014, a lot of things start to work bad in economic terms, especially in the international financial area. And of course, that had an effect on us. And if you ask me, one of the biggest effects of that is the decrease in the oil production that a lot of people blame on Maduro. But if you ask me, I believe that is very connected to the US sanctions. So a lot of media talk a lot about how bad is the management of Maduro in terms that the oil production of the country is like right now going down. But the truth is that that happened because you need investment, you need financial assistance when you are talking about producing oil, and when you are being blockaded from the US and from the European countries, that make your work in terms of oil production harder. So that's part of the problem. I'm very Chavista. I'm very supportive of Maduro. But I have to say also that I believe that there were also a lot of economic decisions that were wrong or were not well implemented. So if you ask me, I believe that we have, as government, even though I'm right now not in the government, we have committed mistakes also. But I believe that the mistakes happen everywhere, in any government. But if you add to the mistake U.S. sanctions, if you add to the mistakes economic war, if you add to the mistake all dependency, if you add to the mistake a lot of other factors, and including the ones connected to the economic internal factors within Venezuela that are also part of the problem because they play the game of the U.S. So you see the situation that we are facing right now in economic terms.
And
that's
it
a very
also,
great
it seems to fuel a propaganda campaign. There's this idea that's spread in the United States. Socialism has failed. Socialism has failed.
Yeah, exactly.
So you have to keep the pressure on and force anybody on a socialist path to fail so you can point the finger and say, see, there's no choice but capitalism.
Yeah. I was reading something, I don't know, it was this one Latin American intellectual that says something like this. I'm going to try to paraphrase it. What happened in Venezuela, he said, is and the US is very similar to the situation in which an assassin is about to strangle you and he is blaming you that you are about to die because you don't know how to breathe. And that's excellent. That's the perfect, analogy to what is happening in Venezuela. I mean, the U.S. is trying to strangle in us, economically talking, and maybe, I hope not, militarily. And doing that, he's saying that he's about to kill us because we don't know how to breathe. So that
sums it up.
Yes.
So can you tell us a little bit about the man who the Trump regime appointed interim president, Juan Guaido? Where is he from? What's his background? What's his party?
He belongs to Voluntad Popular. That's the most radical right-wing party in Venezuela. He was like forced in line. I mean, in that party, the most recognizable leaders, if you can call them that, are Leopoldo Lopez, that is in house arrest for a few years, Julio Borges, which is currently in Colombia because he is accused of being involved in the drone assassination attempt of President Maduro last August. And you have another one that was the third in line, and Guaido was the fourth in line, according to something that I read a few days ago.
So could you tell us?
And they tried to upper middle class, and they needed someone that connect a little bit darker, that connect with Venezuelan masses and with the Chavistas, and that's part. I mean, everything besides the appearance of Guaido is not casual. Everything has been manufactured in media laboratories from the US and in Venezuela. So they prepared this, and some people I believe around there are saying that this guy is socialist, that he is social democrat or whatever, which is not true. I mean, that guy is a right winger, and you can see photos of him kicking a policewoman a few years ago in a demonstration, or showing his back in another demonstration a few years ago. And I mean, it's a very right-wing actor with not too much. I mean, I didn't know that guy exists until 2 or 3 months ago.
Really?
I mean, yes, because he was before that mayor of La Guaira, and some people say that he did a nice job there. La Guaira is like a satellite, like a suburb of Caracas, like. And then he was elected as deputy for the National Assembly, the one that was won by the right wingers in 2015. and since then, no one talk about him.
And on the question of elections, there's been a lot of, I think, a lot of propaganda in the United States, saying that the most recent elections were unfair. And the story that doesn't get out is that several right-wing parties refused to participate in the elections. Right?
Yes. Yes.
So tell us about what are some of the kinds of what is electoral participation, electoral security like in Venezuela? I've heard it's very strong in terms of electoral.
Yes, of course. Yes, and I truly believe that with Chavez, we built one of the most robust electoral system in the world. I can tell you that with some sort of certainty because as Consul General of Venezuela in Chicago, I was able to interact with other consuls from, at least from other Latin American countries in Chicago. And my experience comparing what we had with what other countries, at least other Latin American countries have, is, shows that we are way far beyond what is normal in electoral process. The electoral process in Venezuela, participate, all the political parties running participate in 18 different audits that occurred before, during, and after the elections. I'm talking about 18 different audits in which each party, I'm not talking about Chavista parties, I'm talking about each party, left wing and right wing, that are participating in that race, have a say on what happened in those audits. And if they complain about that, there's going to be a problem. We cannot pass to the next level. So that's to give you an idea. We also implemented something that I believe that is unique, which is the scanning of the fingerprint. When you are going to vote, a machine scan your fingerprint to avoid one voter multiple votes. You know what? That happened everywhere. That happened even in the U.S. And we initialized that during Chavez government. I believe that in 2002 or 2003, and that's great because that gives you certainty that no one will vote. More than once.
Mm-hmm.
The counting of the votes is public. Everyone in every electoral board, in every electoral chair, even from the opposition parties and from voters that want to participate in the counting, they can be there. It's not forbidden. It's public. It's a public act. And also, 1 or 2 days after each elections, you can see the results of each electoral board in the website of the electoral council. So you can compare what you saw in the counting of your electoral board with what is published by the Consejo Nacional Electoral, the Electoral National Council. So, there are like multiple ways that shows you that it's very complicated to bypass or to trick that electoral system.
So it sounds yeah. Oh, no, please finish.
No, I just want to go back to the elections for the National Assembly for the Maduro last May, and basically those parties that refuse to participate are the parties that are playing the game of the U.S. Those are the parties that didn't want to sign an agreement that was about to sign last February. I'm talking about February or I believe that is February or March last year, that we had like weeks of negotiations in Dominican Republic, and we were about to sign an agreement, and they decided not to sign it because at the last minute there is some people that say that they received a call from Washington that told them not to sign that agreement. But one of the things that was set up in that agreement was the call for early presidential elections. And what Maduro did after not having that agreement signed was, he said, well, these guys didn't want to sign that agreement, but I'm going to release some political, what they call political prisoners that are basically political criminals in jail. But he released some of them and he called for early elections. And then they start crying. They start saying that they didn't want early elections, even though they were asking for those elections for more than 2 years. So disregarding that the main right-wing political parties in Venezuela opposed those elections, some parties from that grouping of right-wing parties decided to participate, and that's when Henry Falcon, a candidate from the right-wingers, decided to join the race. So in that race was not a race of only Maduro running with himself. I mean, in that race there were like 6 or 5 presidential candidates, and they were 2 that gained more than around or more than 1 million votes. I mean, I believe that the third one got something around 1 million, a little bit less. Henry Falcon had a little bit close to 1.9 million votes, and Maduro have like 6 million votes. And if you compare that, are we still alive?
We're alive. So.
Okay, if you compare that with with what is happening in sorry, I believe that I have a problem with my video, but I'm back.
Okay.
Okay. But yes, ask your question.
Oh, so yeah, I think it's drawing close to time to end the show here, but it sounds like this was very clearly an incredibly undemocratic attack on Venezuela, on the Venezuelan people. Could you just tell us a little bit about how people are responding there? The images we see in the United States are all anti-Maduro protesters.
That's a lie.
So yeah, yes, what's it like?
Yes, it's like let me tell you. Last, I believe that it was Wednesday, the 23rd. There were 2 demonstrations, 2 Chavistas demonstrations. I mean, 1 Chavista demonstration and 1 from the right wingers. Those demonstrations were massive. I believe that the right wingers managed to mobilize a few quiet people, and the Chavistas also managed to mobilize a few quiet people. I believe that the numbers of each demonstration were very similar, if you ask me, to being very objective. But they didn't. And the days after that, they have been trying to create with criminal bands some sort of violent guarimbas, as we call it, like protests in some street in Venezuela. But it's more than evident that those things didn't have the effect that they want. They wanted to create some confrontation because this time they did that in working class neighborhoods, and they create some situations of violence, but that didn't escalate. And meanwhile, the government has been asking the masses, the Chavista masses, to mobilize, and we have been moving more than them. Actually, yesterday or before yesterday, there was this demonstration called by the right winger that didn't manage to. I mean, they didn't have more than 5,000 people there. I believe that being very optimistic and being very generous with, they don't mobilize too much. And the spirit among Chavistas is going up because in front of the aggression, in the evidence of the U.S. direction of all of this, the Chavista people got indignated and more, with more energy to try to, defend the country, because right now we are seeing that there's a big chance of, us being invaded. So that's to give you a very quick outlook about what's happening. And tomorrow we want to have a demonstration. I believe that the right wingers also are having a demonstration, but I believe that the Chavista demonstration that is going to happen tomorrow in Avenida Bolívar in Caracas is going to be massive, if you ask me.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much again, Jesus Rodriguez, for joining us. We send you our solidarity to you and to the people of Venezuela with the struggle for the Bolivarian Revolution and the struggle against imperialism. Yes, thank you again.
No, thank you, guys, and thank the U.S. for the solidarity. I mean, we have been seeing a lot of solidarity from the U.S. in recent days, and we need more. And we are always welcome to talk with you, and you know that we enjoy doing things with you guys. So whatever you need, just ask, and we will be there.
Excellent.
Please go to our website at www.cpusa.org. We have a petition there that says hands off Venezuela. We're calling on the Trump administration and our elected officials to refuse to allow Mr. Trump to intervene militarily and to support the elected government of the Venezuelan people. You can also go to our Facebook page and you'll find other action items related to Venezuela. So, Jesus, thank you very much. Scott, thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
Bye-bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Bye-bye, guys.